Welcome back to the Buddhist Bookshelf YouTube channel. In today's session, we delve into the final chapter of our voyage through the Sorrowless Flower, a profoundly insightful literary masterpiece authored by Ngoc Tran, who is also known by the Dharma name Thien Phuc. This episode holds special significance as it represents the 42nd and concluding installment in this enlightening series. We extend our heartfelt gratitude for accompanying us to the very end of this enlightening journey. If you found value in this series, we kindly ask for your support by liking and sharing this video, allowing others to benefit from its wisdom as well. Thank you. 570. Three main schools in Buddhism. The first school is the Southern School or Theravada. The Southern or Theravada, teachings of the elders, also known as the Hinayana, which arose in southern India, whence it spread to Ceylon, Burma, Thailand, Laos and Cambodia. The little or minor, small, vehicle. Name of the earliest system of Buddhist doctrine, opposed to the Mahayana. This is the term which the Mahayana utilizes to refer to those who follow Theravada, for they have own liberation goal, rather than that of all beings. In fact, Hinayana developed between the death of Buddha and the 1st century BC, and it represented the original and pure teaching as it was taught by the Buddha. The essence of the teaching is expressed in the Four Noble Truths, the doctrine of dependent arising, the teaching of the ego, the law of karma, and the Eightfold Noble Path. The second school is the North School or the Mahayana, major vehicle or the school of Mahayana. After the Buddha's death, Buddhism was divided into many schools. The two main branches were Hinayana and Mahayana. Whoever seeks to become an arhat belongs to the Hinayana, while whoever seeks to become a Buddha belongs to the Mahayana. Right after the Buddha death, the school of Mahayana, attributed to the rise in India of the Madhyamaka, the school ascribed to Nagarjuna, and the Yoga, the rest of the sects belonged to the Hinayana. The Madhyamaka and Yoga were called San Luan and Dharmalaksana in China. In Japan, only Kosa and Satya City belonged to the Hinayana, the rest of other schools belonged to the Mahayana. The Mahayana moved from northern India to Tibet, Mongolia, China, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan. Unlike southern Buddhism, which tended to remain conservative and doctrinaire, the Mahayana adapted itself to the needs of peoples of diverse racial and cultural backgrounds and varying levels of understanding. The greater vehicle, one of the two great schools of Buddhism, Hinayana and Mahayana. The Mahayana arose in the 1st century BC. It is called Great Vehicle because its objective is the salvation of all beings. It opens the way of liberation to a great number of people, and indeed, expresses the intention to liberate all beings. One of the most critical in Mahayana is that it stresses the value on laypersons. It emphasizes that laypersons can also attain nirvana if they strive to free themselves from worldly bondages. Major Mahayana sects include Huayan, Tiantai, Zen and the Pure Land. It should be noted that Mahayana spread from India to Tibet, China, Korea and Vietnam. We must recognize that the Mahayana has contributed a great deal to Buddhist thought and culture. It has produced a wonderful path of bodhisattvas. Sakyamuni. Buddha set an example by his own career that people could emulate. The goal of this career was enlightenment in Buddhahood, and the way was the way of the bodhisattva. The Third Council was held during the reign of Emperor Asoka in the 3rd century BC. There were already at least 18 schools, each with its own doctrines and disciplinary rules. Among them, two schools dominated the deliberations at the Third Council, an analytical school called Vibhajyavadins, and a school of realistic pluralism known as the Sarvastivadins. The council decided in favor of the analytical school, and it was the views of this school that were carried to Sri Lanka by Asoka's missionaries, led by his son Mahendra. There it became known as the Theravada. The adherents of the Sarvastivada mostly migrated to Kashmir in the northwest of India, where the school became known for its popularization of the path of the perfections of the Bodhisattva. However, another council, the Fourth Council, was held during the reign of King Kanishka in the 1st century AD in Kashmir. Two more important schools emerged, the Vibhashikas and the Sautrantikas. These two differed on the authenticity of the Abhidharma, the Vibhashikas holding that the Abhidharma was taught by the Buddha, while the Sautrantikas held that it was not. By this time, Mahayana accounts tell us, a number of assemblies had been convened in order to compile the scriptures of the Mahayana tradition, which were already reputed to be vast in number. In the north and southwest of India as well as Nalanda and Magadha, the Mahayana was studied and taught. Many of the important texts of the Mahayana were believed to have been related by Maitreya, the future Buddha, and other celestial bodhisattvas. The written texts of Mahayana as well as those of other schools began to appear about 500 years after the Buddha's nirvana. The earliest Mahayana sutras such as the Lotus Sutra and the Sutra of the Perfection of Wisdom are usually dated before the 1st century AD. The essence of the Mahayana Buddhism is the conception of compassion for all living beings. The Mahayana, with its profound philosophy, its universal compassion and its abundant use of skillful means, rapidly began to attract the majority of people, not only in India, but in the newly Buddhist lands of Central Asia. The origin of Mahayana may be traced to an earlier school known as Mahasangika, and earlier literary sources known as Mahayana Sutras. By the 1st century AD, the formation of the Mahayana Buddhism was virtually complete, and most of the major Mahayana sutras were in existence. Theoretically speaking, Mahayana Buddhism is divided into two systems of thought: the Madhyamaka and the Yogacara. The third school is the Mantrayana, the esoteric method. The esoteric mantra or Yogacara sect developed especially in Shingon, with Vairocana as the chief object of worship, and the mandalas of Garbhodhatu and Vajradhatu. The esoteric teaching or Tantric Buddhism, in contrast with the open schools, He and Yo. The Buddhist Tantra consists of sutras of a so-called mystical nature which endeavor to teach the inner relationship of the external world and the world of spirit, of the identity of mind and universe. Among the devices employed in Tantric meditational practices are the following. First, the contemplation of the mandala. Mandala means circle assemblage picture. There are various kinds of mandala, but the most common in esoteric Buddhism are of two types. A composite picture graphically portraying different classes of demons, deities, Buddhas and bodhisattvas, representing various powers, forces, and activities, within symbolic squares and circles, and in the center of which is a figure of the Buddha Vairocana, the great illuminator. And a diagrammatic representation wherein certain sacred Sanskrit letters, called bija or seeds, are substituted for figures. Second, the contemplation of the mantra. Mantras are the sacred sounds, such as for example, are transmitted from the master to his disciple at the time of initiation. When the disciple's mind is properly attuned, the inner vibrations of this word symbol together with its associations in the consciousness of the initiate are said to open his mind to higher dimension. Third, mudra. Mudras are physical gestures, especially symbolical hand movements, which are performed to help evoke certain states of mind parallel to those of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The esoteric school is divided into two divisions. First, the miscellaneous mystic sect. What we designate as miscellaneous mystic, of which mantras were translated early in the 4th century AD. Sumitra of Kutcha, a Central Asian state inhabited by a white race, translated some texts into Chinese. These were charms, cures, and other sorts of sorcery, often containing some mantra prayers and praises of gods or saints of higher grades, but generally speaking, they could not be regarded as expressing a high aspiration. Second, the pure mystic sect. What we can designate as pure mystic begins with some able Indian teachers who arrived in China during the Tang period, 713 to 765. First, Subhakarasimha, 637 to 735. Second, Vajrabodhi, 663 to 723. Third, Amagavajra, 705 to 774, and fourth, Aishin, 683 to 727. 571. 7 special places after the Buddha's enlightenment. After enlightenment, the Buddha is said to have bathed in the sacred tank. The two tanks which now still exist, one in the Paipalpati hamlet, south of Buddha Pokhara, and the other is the Tikahaya hamlet, east of the former, seem to be the tanks, Sakra and Muchalinda respectively. After taking a bath in the sacred tank, the Buddha sat cross-legged at the foot of the Bodhi tree, gazing at it for 7 days, enjoying the bliss of nirvana. He spent the second week in walking to and fro near the Bodhi tree. The site the Buddha's promenade, also known as Shrine of the Jewel Walk, is along the northern side of the Mahabodhi temple. The footsteps of the Buddha are represented by lotus flowers on a narrow masonry platform about 53 feet long, 3.6 feet broad, and a little more than 3 feet high. First, the diamond throne. The diamond throne or Vajrasana is situated between the Bodhi tree and the Mahabodhi temple. This seat is made of stone which is 7.6 feet long, 4.10 feet broad and 3 feet high, where Prince Siddhartha sat to become Buddha, and which is the holiest of holy places to the Buddhist world. It is said the diamond throne is the immutable place for the enlightenment of all the Buddhas, and it is also the navel of the earth. No other place can support the weight of the Buddha's enlightenment, and none can travel in the air immediately above it, not even Sakka or Indra. Second, the Animashalakkhana Stupa. The Animashalakkhana Stupa is located within the courtyard of the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh. This is a small stupa erected at the site where the Buddha stood during the third week, out of gratitude, stood gazing at the Bodhi tree for giving him shelter, while he attained supreme enlightenment. The stupa was built in bricks, some of which are carved. It is square at the base and tapering towards the top, the height being 55 feet. Third, the Chankramana Chaitya. The site is marked by a raised platform along the northern wall of the main temple of Mahabodhi temple at Bodh. At this place, the Buddha spent 1 week walking up and down in meditation. The platform is 3 feet high and 60 feet long. The stumps of pillars, still existing, indicate that the walk was flanked with stone pillars which probably supported a roof over it. On the platform, there are lotuses to indicate the place where the Buddha's feet rested while walking. Fourth, the Ratanagraha Chaitya. This is a small roofless shrine, marks the place where the Buddha spent the 4th week in meditation, and recited to himself Saman's Padhana. While in contemplation, the blue, yellow, red, white, and orange rays emanated from his body. The Buddhist flag of India and Ceylon are designed with these colors. Fifth, the Rahayatana tree. This is the tree under which the Buddha spent the 7th week after his supreme enlightenment. The actual site is not known yet. The Buddha is said to have sat on a stone seat which sprang up there from the ground, and there he made his first converts, Tapasa and Baluka, 2 merchants from Itkala, modern Orissa. From the Rahayatana tree, the site of which has not been identified yet, the Buddha returned to the Bodhi tree, and, after some time, thoughtfully proceeded to the deer park at Sarnath, modern Isipatana. Sixth, the Ahapala tree. It was under this tree that Sujata offered milk rice to the Buddha before he left for the Bodhi tree. Here he is said to have spent the 5th week after his supreme enlightenment. The actual site of this tree has not been identified yet, but a place within the premises of a Hindu temple in the village of Bakror on the eastern bank of Narahara River is pointed out as the site where this tree stood. The site of Sujata Kutir is nearby. 7th, the Mukalinda Lake. This is a famous lake at Bodh, about 2 kilometers south to the lotus tank, is pointed out the spot where the Buddha spent the 6th week. While the Buddha was meditating near the lake, there broke out a severe thunderstorm. Seeing that the Buddha was getting drenched, a Naga king of the lake called Kalinda came out from his abode and, encircling the body of the Buddha, held his hood over him. 572. Buddhist flag. According to Buddhist records, as the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, 6 rays of light emitted from his body after his enlightenment. Based on this, the Buddhist flag indicates that all the different races in the world can live happily under the shield of the Buddha's wisdom. The Buddhist flag is made of 5 colors. Blue, yellow, red, white, and orange, has been used in Sri Lanka since 1882. In 1950, at the First World Buddhist Conference, held in Colombo, a resolution was passed to accept the flag as the international Buddhist symbol. The 5 colors of the flag represented the aura of the Buddha's body, which was seen on the day of his enlightenment. Blue stands for devotion, yellow for intellect, red for love, white for purity and orange for energy. 573. 8 aspects of Buddha's life. There are 8 periods of Buddha's life. First, descending from the Tushita heaven palace, or descend into and abode in the Tusita heaven. Second, abode at the Tushita and visibly preach to the devas. Third, entry into his mother's womb, Queen Mahamaya. Fourth, birth from his mother's side in Lumbini. Fifth, leaving the home life, leaving home at the age of 29 as a hermit. Sixth, subduing Mara and accomplishing the way. After 6 years suffering, subduing Mara and attaining enlightenment. Seventh, turning the Dharma wheel, rolling the law wheel or preaching. Eighth, entering nirvana, parinirvana, at the age of 80. 574. Places that are related to the Buddha's life and activities. According to Faxian and the records of the Western lands, there were a lot of stupas associated with some activities of the Buddha. However, he only mentioned some that attracted his attention, or some he thought they were important enough to record in his journal. They usually were stupas that were built over the places of commemoration of the Buddha. First, where Prince Siddhartha Gautama was born at Lumbini Garden. Second, where Prince Siddhartha Gautama, having left the city by Eastern Gate, saw a sick man, and ordered his charioteer Channa to return to the palace at Kapilavastu. Third, where Prince Siddhartha Gautama dismissed his charioteer Channa and his white horse Kanthaka in the country of Ramagrayoma. Fourth, where the Buddha practiced austerity for 6 years. Fifth, where the Buddha once bathed into deity lowered a branch of a tree for him to hold on and step out of the water. Sixth, where the maidens of Gramika offered milk and rice to the prince. Seventh, where the Buddha sat facing east on a rock under a great tree and ate rice. Eighth, where Prince Siddhartha Gautama attained Buddhahood at Gaya. Ninth, where the Buddha, 7 days after his enlightenment, looked at the Bodhi tree and enjoyed the bliss of emancipation at Gaya. 10th, where the Buddha walked from east to west for 7 days under the Bodhi tree at Gaya. 11th, where the deities raised a terrace made of 7 precious substances to make offerings to the Buddha for 7 days at Gaya. 12th, where the Buddha sat on a square rock facing east under an Igrodhead tree when Brahma came to invite him to preach the Dharma at Gaya. 13th, where 4 celestial kings presented him with an alms bowl at Gaya. 14th, where 500 merchants offered him flour and honey at Gaya. 15th, where the Buddha sat facing east, preached the first sermon and converted Kandinya and his companions at Varanasi in the Deer Park. 16th, where he predicted the future of Maitreya Buddha at Varanasi in the Deer Park. 17th, where the dragon Alapatra asked the Buddha when he could be free from his dragon form at Varanasi in the Deer Park. 18th, where the Buddha converted the 3 Kasyapa brothers and their 1,000 disciples at Gaya. 19th, where the Buddha returned to see his father after his enlightenment at Kapilavastu. 20th, where the earth quaked 6 times when 500 princes of the Sakya clan worshipped Upali after having renounced their home at Kapilavastu. 21st, where the Buddha preached the Dharma to the deities, while the 4 celestial kings guarded the 4 gates of the half to prevent King Suddhodana from entering at Kapilavastu. 22nd, where the Buddha sat facing east under an Agrodhead tree while Mahaprajapati offered him a robe at Kapilavastu. 23rd, where God Zakra and Brahma came down to earth from Trayastrimsa heaven along with the Buddha at Samkasya. 24th, where Nanuptala was the first to worship the Buddha when he came down from Trayastrimsa at Samkasya. 25th, where the Buddha expounded the Dharma to his disciples at Kanyakuja. 26th, where the Buddha preached the law, where he walked and where he sat at Hari village. 27th, where the Buddha preached for the salvation of men, where he walked and where he sat at Sarvasti city. Each stupa had a distinctive name. 28th, where the Buddha stood by the roadside when King Viradhaka set out to attack the Sakya clan at Sarvasti. 29th, where King Viradhaka slaughtered the descendants of the Sakya clan who had all attained to the first stage of sainthood at Kapilavastu. 30th, where the Buddha converted an evil demon, 8 yojanas to the east of the garden of Gushira at Kausamba. 31st, where the Buddha lived, where he walked to Champa. 32nd, where the Buddha left Vesali with his disciples by the west gate and turning to the right, looked back at the city and said, "This is the last place I have visited." 33rd, where the Buddha lying in a golden coffin received homage for 7 days at Kusinara. 34th, where Vajrapani laid down his golden mace at Kusinara. 35th, where the Buddha entered into nirvana at Kusinara. 575. The Buddha's 9 distresses. 9 distresses borne by the Buddha while he was still alive. First, he was badly slandered by Sundara. Second, Kanka tried to dishonor him by pretending to pregnant and falsely accusing him. Third, Devadatta, his cousin, plotted to assassinate him by rolling stones downhill when he passed by the creek. Fourth, he was pierced by an arrow accidentally. Fifth, son of King Prasenajit killed all people in the Sakya tribe. Sixth, due to his compassion, the Buddha accepted an invitation from a Brahmin. However, when the Buddha and his order arrived, the Brahmin refused to serve them. As a result, the Buddha and his order had to accept offering from the stable keeper. 7th, cold wind to cause back pain. 8th, 6 years of ascetics. 9th, entering the village for alms for 3 consecutive days without receiving any food, returning with empty bowl. 576. 4 way of going wrong. According to the Sanjiti Sutta and Long Discourses of the Buddha, there are 4 ways of going wrong. First, one goes wrong through desire. Second, one goes wrong through hatred. Third, one goes wrong through delusion. Fourth, one goes wrong through fear. 577. 4 things that may not be treated lightly. According to the Agama Sutra, there are 4 things that may not be treated lightly. First, a prince though young now, but he may become a king in the future, so not to treat him lightly. Second, a snake though small, but its venom can kill people, so not to treat it lightly. Third, a fire though tiny, but it may be able to destroy a big forest or meadow, so not to treat it lightly. Fourth, a novice though a beginner, but he may become an rat, so not to treat him lightly. 578. 4 self-injuries. There are 4 self-injuries or 4 self-ratings. First, in youth not to study from morning till night. Second, in advancing years not to see sexual intercourse. Third, in wealth not being charitable. Fourth, in present life not to accept and practice the Buddha's teaching. 579. 10 kinds of non-doing of great enlightening beings. According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 27, there are 10 kinds of non-doing of great enlightening beings. Great enlightening beings who abide in the concentration of the differentiated bodies of all sentient beings also attain 10 kinds of non-doing. First, the non-doing of physical acts. Second, the non-doing of verbal acts. Third, the non-doing of mental acts. Fourth, the non-doing of spiritual powers. Fifth, the non-doing of comprehension of the essencelessness of phenomena. Sixth, the non-doing of knowledge of non-dissolution of the force of actions. Seventh, the non-doing of non-discriminatory knowledge. Eighth, the non-doing of knowledge of non-origination. Ninth, the non-doing of knowing things have no destruction. 10th, the non-doing of following the letter without destroying the meaning. 580. 10 steps in the nourishment of perfection. There are 10 steps in the nourishment of perfection. These minds are associated with the 10 necessary activities, in which the bodhisattvas have the following minds: the mind of kindness, the mind of pity, the mind of joy, relinquishing, almsgiving, good discourse, benefiting, friendship, dhyana, and wisdom. 581. 10 things which cause practitioners to be pure. According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 18, there are 10 things which cause the practices of enlightening beings to be pure. Once enlightening beings have attained purity in practice, they also 10 even greater things. First, giving up all possessions to satisfy the wishes of sentient beings. Second, adhering to pure morality, not transgressing. Third, being inexhaustibly gentle and tolerant. Fourth, cultivating practices diligently without regressing. Fifth, being free from confusion and mental disturbance through the power of correct mindfulness. 6th, analyzing and comprehending the innumerable teachings. 7th, cultivating all practices without attachment. 8th, being mentally imperturbable, like a great mountain. 9th, extensively liberating living beings, like a bridge. 10th, knowing that all living beings are in essence the same as the Buddhas. 582. 4 forms of good behavior. 4 respect-inspiring forms of demeanor or 4 instances of prajna which a monk or nun should practice every day. Walking, standing, lying, and sitting. The Buddha taught about the 4 postures in the Satipatthana Sutta. Bhikkhus, when walking, a bhikkhu understands. I am walking when standing, he understands. I am standing when sitting, he understands. I am sitting when lying down, he understands. I am lying down, or he understands accordingly however his body is disposed. Again, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu is one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food, and tasting, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. 583. Mind only. Mind only or idealism, the theory that the only reality is mental, that of the mind. Nothing exists apart from mind. Similar to only mind or only consciousness in the Lamkavatara Sutra. Mind only is the theory that the only reality is mental, that of the mind. The theory that the only reality is mental, that of the mind. Nothing exists apart from mind. A Sanskrit term for mind only. A term that implies that all of reality is actually a creation of consciousness. It is commonly associated with the Yogacara tradition of Indian Buddhism, although it is only rarely mentioned in Yogacara works, which generally use the term Vijnapti Matra, or cognition only. Even though the term is rare in Yogacara literature, it is used by Tibetan Buddhism to designate the tradition, instead of the better attested term Yogacara or practice of yoga. From the alayu arise 2 kinds of consciousness, Jnana and Vijnapti causes all feelings, perceptions, concepts, and thoughts to appear. It is based in the sense organs, the nervous system, and the brain. The object of Vijnapti is reality in itself, and is possible only when feelings and perceptions are pure and direct. When seen through the veil of conceptualization, the same object can be only an image of reality or a pure image, such as a dream while asleep or daydream. Although the object of a pure sensation is reality in itself, when this reality is seen through concepts and thoughts, it is already distorted. Reality in itself is a stream of life, always moving. Images of reality produced by concepts are concrete structures framed by the concepts of space-time, birth-death, production-destruction, existence-non-existence, one-many. Within Vijnapti, there are 6 consciousnesses. Consciousness of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. The mind consciousness has the broadest field of activity. It can be active in conjunction with the other senses, for example, awareness of seeing. It can also be active on its own, such as in conceptualizing, reflecting, imagining, and dreaming. Following the 5 consciousness of the senses, mind consciousness is called the 6th consciousness. Jnana or manas and alayu are the 7th and 8th consciousnesses. According to the theories of Vijnanavada, the doctrine of consciousness, or the doctrine of the Yogacara, is that only intelligence has reality, not the objects exterior to us. Dharmalaksana sect, which holds that all is mind in its ultimate nature. The doctrine of idealism school concerns chiefly with the facts or specific characters, lakshana, of all elements on which the theory of idealism was built in order to elucidate that no element is separate from ideation. Although it is usually expressed by saying that all dharmas are mere ideation or that there is nothing but ideation, the real sense is quite different. It is idealistic because all elements are in some way or other always connected with ideation. This doctrine was based on the teaching of the Buddha in the Avatamsaka Sutra, that the 3 worlds exist only in ideation. According to ideation theory, The outer world does not exist, but the internal ideation presents appearance as if it were an outer world. The whole world is therefore of either illusory or causal nature, and no permanent reality can be found. In India, two famous monks named Wu Cho and Thien Phuc wrote some sastras on Vijnana. They had an outstanding disciple named Chai Hsien, an Indian monk living at Nalanda Monastery. Later, Chai Hsien established the Vijnanavada school and contributed much to the arrangement of the Buddhist canons. In China, Xuanzang, to whom Chai Hsien handed over the sastra, founded this school in his native land. Later, the school was also called Dharmalaksana, Fa Tsiang Tsung, and was led by Kuei Kai, a great disciple of Xuanzang. There are 5 kinds of wisdom or insight or idealistic representation in the sutras and sastras. The first 4 are objective, and the 5th is subjective. First, wisdom or insight in objective conditions. Second, wisdom or insight in interpretation. Third, wisdom or insight in principles. Fourth, wisdom or insight in meditation and practice. Fifth, wisdom or insight in the fruits or results of Buddhahood. According to the Lankavatara Sutra, there are 6 proofs for the mind only. Things are not what they seem as proved from the analogy of a dream and magical creations. When Ravana, king of Lanka, saw images of the Buddha all around him, which later disappeared, he thought, could this be a dream? Or a magical phenomenon like the castle of the Gandharvas? He reflected again, this is no other than the projection of my own mental creations. As we do not truly understand things as they are, we separate the seen from the seer, thus producing a world of dualities. Where there is no false discrimination, one really sees the Buddha. As long as we are in the dream, we do not realize that we are all dreaming, that we are slaves of false discrimination. For it is only when we are awakened from it that we know where we have been. The analogy of dream is quite a strong argument against the reality of an external world, but it is not all effective for them who are actually dreaming. So it is with magical creations. The Indians have been noted for their skill in the art of conjuration, and they are no people among whom the use of mantras and dharanas is so universal. Hence the frequent allusions to magic in the literature of Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. The magician is so wonderfully proficient in making the spectator see objects where there are none whatever. As long as they are under his spell, there is no way of making them realize that they are the victims of hypnotism. The favorite analogies besides the dream and magic that are resorted to in the Lankavatara to show the unreality of objects seen externally and internally are paintings, a hair circle to the dim-eyed, a revolving fire wheel, a bubble looks like a sun, reflected trees in water. Images in a mirror, an echo, fata morgana, a mechanical man, a floating cloud, and lightning. Second, all things are relative and have no substance, svabhava, which would eternally and absolutely distinguish one from another. Things are nothing but relations, analyze them into their component elements, and there will be nothing left. And are not all relations the constructions of the mind? Thus the siddha seeing itself reflected is due to reflection and discrimination. So far no harm is done, for the mental constructions are perceived as such, and there are no wrong judgments about them. The trouble begins at once when they are adhered to as externally real, having their own values independent of the valuing mind itself. This is why the sutra emphasizes the importance of looking at things, yudhabhutam, as they really are. When they are thus looked at things, they are no more than the mind itself. The principle of relativity creates a world of individuals, but when it is transcended, there is mind itself. The third proof, names and images are mere signs, samkheta, and have no reality whatever, abhava, in themselves, for they belong to the imagination, parikalpita. Imagination is another name for false discrimination, which is the mischievous agency of creation. The fact of one mind, ekasiddham, is thus buried in the differentiation of individual existence. According to words they discriminate wrongfully and make statements concerning reality. And because of these statements they are burned in hell. How much we owe in our daily intercourse to words. And yet what grave consequences, not only logically but spiritually, we suffer from words. The light of the mind is altogether beclouded in and with words. The mind has, indeed, created words, and now taking these words for realities independent of their creator, it gets entangled in them and is swallowed up in the waves of transmigration. The ignorant take what is presented by the mind itself for objective realities which do not really exist, and because of this wrong representation, discrimination is falsified. This, however, is not the case with the wise. The wise know that names and signs and symbols are to be taken for what they are intended from the beginning, while the ignorant cling to them as if they were realities and let their minds blindly follow up this clinging. Thus, they get attached to a variety of forms and entertain the view that there are really I and mine, and by doing so, they hold fast to appearances in their multiplicity. Because of these attachments, their higher wisdom is obstructed, greed, anger, and infatuation are stirred up, and all kinds of karma are committed. As these attachments are repeatedly committed, the ignorant find themselves hopelessly enwrapped within the cocoons woven out of their wrong discriminations. They are swallowed up in the waves of transmigration, and do not know how to go ahead in the work of emancipation, for they turn round and round like the water wheel. It is owing to their ignorance, indeed, that they fail to realize that all things, like Maya, the shining mote, or the moonlight on water, have no self-substance, that there is nothing in them to take hold of as me and mine, that all things are unreal, abhuta, born of wrong discrimination, that ultimate reality is above the dualism of marked and marking, and the course of birth, staying, and disappearance that is manifested due to the discriminating by one's own mind of what is presented to it. Imagining that the world is born of isvara, time, atom, or universal soul, the ignorant are addicted to names and forms, thereby allowing themselves to be swayed by them. The fourth proof, that which is unborn has nothing to do with causation, there is no creator, all is nothing but the construction, vyavasthana, of the mind, as I teach that which is unborn. That there is no creator such as Isvara or Pradhana or Brahma, is one of the principal theses of Mahayana Buddhism. According to the Lankavatara, the notion of a creator is due to discrimination, which always tends to lead the mind in a wrong direction. When it is seen that all is mind only, Siddhamatra, that which is unborn will present itself instead. No birth, not because of non-existence, nor because existence is to be regarded as mutually dependent, nor because there is a name for existence, nor because name has no reality behind it. That all is unborn does not belong to the realm of Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, or philosophers, or of those bodhisattvas who are still on the seventh stage. No birth is constructed on the truth of the mind only. Fifth, the absolutely idealistic monism, the logical necessity of reaching the ultimate notion of unity. Thus, the Lankavatara accepts the doctrine of mind only instead of matter only. When no creator is recognized and all forms of dualism are set aside as not in accord with the real state of things, there remain two ways for achieving the unification of thought, realism and idealism. And the Lankavatara denies the reality of an external world, Vishaya, or outside objects, Bahyabhava, that are characterized with multitudinousness, Visitrata. The doctrine of mind only seems to be the natural conclusion. Thus the absolutely idealistic monism is to use the transcendental knowledge, prajnarjnana, to take cognizance of the manifoldness of an objective world, not by the relative knowledge, vijnana. Again, this transcendental knowledge is not within the reach of the two vehicles. As it, indeed, goes beyond the realm of beings, the knowledge of Sravakas moves by attaching itself to beings which they take for realities, while the pure transcendental knowledge of the Tathagata penetrates into the truth of the mind only. While the objective world disturbs this unity and makes the mind, thus disturbed, perceive manifoldness within its own body. It then clings to these individualizing disturbances as real, thus losing its original purity or unity altogether in them. This is the source of spiritual tribulations. Sixth, the proof of three worlds or mind itself. This is the strongest of all the proofs that can be advanced for the statement that the world is mind itself, Tribhavas Vasatamatram, is that of intuitive knowledge, Pratyaksha. While this is what is final in all form of conviction, speculative or practical, the force is especially strongly felt in religious truths, which are not founded upon reasoning, but upon immediate perception. So with the Lankavatara, its thesis is derived from its immediacy, and not from its intellectual precision. The ultimate principle of knowledge is not dependent upon anything logically reasoned. It is I see and I believe. It is what is realized within oneself, means of the supreme wisdom, erujnana, of the Tathagata, or rather it is the supreme wisdom of itself, for the awakening of this wisdom means the grasping of the ultimate principle, which is the same thing as the realization within one's inmost consciousness of the truth, that there is nothing in the world but the mind. This truth is beyond the realm of discursive knowledge. This special knowledge, which may be called intuitive. The Buddha taught Mahamati in the Lankavatara Sutra, "O Mahamati, if they form any notion at all about it, there will be no supreme wisdom taking hold of reality, Vastu." By this we know that knowledge that takes hold of the ultimate cannot be brought into a system of categories, for if anything is to be said about it, it turns into an idea of it, and the real thing is no more there, and what is left behind is nothing but confusion or delusion. Attachment to realities as having self-substance is produced from not knowing, and avabodha, that there is nothing but that which is projected and perceived by one's own mind. Avabodha is really awakening. Something is awakened within the consciousness, and it is at once recognized that all is mind. The awakening is above the dualism of to be, sat, and not to be, asat, the latter being due to false discrimination, vikalpa. The awakening is, therefore, the sight of the ultimate principle of existence as it is in itself, and not determined by any form of confusion or otherness. This is what meant by to see Yuthabhutam. During the first centuries of Christian era, a new Buddhist school known as the mind-only, Yogacarans, began to form. After 500 AD it came to dominate the thought of the Mahayana more and more. The distinctive doctrine of the Yogacarans taught that the Absolute is thought. This doctrine is not really a new one. It had been clearly stated in the scriptures of all other schools. Between 150 and 400 AD, we have several other literary documents which teach thought only. The Lankavatara Sutra, the Avatamsaka, and the Abhisamalankara occupy a position midway between Madhyamakas and Yogacaras. The Abhisamalankara is an influential commentary on the Prajnaparamita which has guided its exegesis from 350 AD onward, and which is still the basis of the explanation of the Prajnaparamita in the monasteries of Tibet and Mongolia. The Avatamsaka takes up the teaching of the sameness of everything, and interprets it as the interpenetration of every element in the world with everything else. Dharmalaksana sect, which holds that all is mind in its ultimate nature. The doctrine of idealism school concerns chiefly with the facts or specific characters, lakshana, of all elements on which the theory of idealism was built in order to elucidate that no element is separate from ideation. Although it is usually expressed by saying that all dharmas are mere ideation or that there is nothing but ideation, the real sense is quite different. It is idealistic because all elements are in some way or other always connected with ideation. This doctrine was based on the teaching of the Buddha in the Avatamsaka Sutra, that the three worlds exist only in ideation. According to ideation theory, the outer world does not exist, but the internal ideation presents appearance as if it were an outer world. The whole world is therefore of either illusory or causal nature, and no permanent reality can be found. In India, two famous monks named Wu Cho and Thien Phuc wrote some sastras on Vijnana. They had an outstanding disciple named Chaya, an Indian monk living at Nalanda Monastery. Later, Chaya established the Vijnanabhata school and contributed much to the arrangement of the Buddhist canons. In China, Xuanzang, to whom Chaya handed over the sastra, founded this school in his native land. Later, the school was also called Dharmalaksana Pha Tsiang Tsung, and was led by Kuei Kai, a great disciple of Xuanzang. 584. 8 Meanings of Mind Only. The doctrine of mind only runs through the Lankavatara Sutra, as if it were wrap and weft, soying gang, of the sutra. To understand it is to realize the ultimate truth, and not to understand it is to transmigrate through many cycles of births and deaths. The sutra lay much emphasis on the importance of the doctrine, so much, indeed, that it makes everything hinge on this one point of the salvation of the world, not to say anything of the individual. Also, according to the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha taught about the 8 meanings of mind only. O Mahamati, first, the mind only leads to the realization of the ultimate truth. Language is not the ultimate truth. What is attainable by language is not the ultimate truth. Why? Because the ultimate truth is what is enjoyed by the wise. By means of speech one can enter into the truth, but words themselves are not the truth. It is the self-realization inwardly experienced by the wise through their supreme wisdom, and does not belong to the domain of words, discrimination, or intelligence, and, therefore, discrimination does not reveal the ultimate truth itself. Moreover, O Mahamati, language is subject to birth and destruction, is unsteady, mutually conditioned, and produced according to the law of causation. And what is mutually conditioning to the law of causation, and produced according to the law of causation, is not the ultimate truth, nor does it come out of such conditions, for it is above aspects of relativity. And words are incapable of producing it, and again as the ultimate truth is in conformity with the view that the visible world is no more than our mind, and as there are no such external objects appearing in their multifarious aspects of individuation, the ultimate truth is not subject to discrimination. O Mahamati, when a man sees into the abode of reality where all things are, he enters upon the truth that what appears to him is not other than mind itself. Second, the mind only is grasped by pure thought. Absolute intelligence or prajna does not belong to the 2 vehicles. It has, indeed, nothing to do with particular objects. The Sravakas are attached to the notion of being, absolute intelligence, pure in essence, belonging to the Tathagata who has entered upon the mind only. Third, bodhisattvas do not enter into nirvana because of their understanding of the truth of the mind only. All the various doings in the triple world, such as the grading of stages in the discipline of bodhisattva and his steady promotion, are nothing but the manifestations of mind. This is not understood by the ignorant, therefore all these things are taught by the Buddhas. And again, the Sravakas and the Pratyekabuddhas, when they reach the 8th stage, become so intoxicated with the bliss of mental tranquility, nirodha samapatti, that they fail to realize that the visible is nothing but the mind. They are still in the realm of individuation, their insight into reality is not yet pure, vivikta. The bodhisattvas, on the other hand, are alive to their original vows flowing out of their all-embracing loving hearts. They do not enter into nirvana. They know that the visible world is nothing but the manifestation of mind itself. They are free from such ideas as mind, citta, will, manas, consciousness, manavijnana, external world, self-substance, and distinguishing marks. Fourth, the mind only and the dualistic conception of being and non-being, which is the outcome of wrong discrimination, vikalpa, stand opposite to each other, and are irreconcilable until the latter is absorbed into the former. Its teaching, intellectually speaking, is to show the fallacy of a world conception based on discrimination, or rather upon wrong discrimination, in order to get us back into the right way of comprehending reality as it is. As the ignorant and unenlightened do not comprehend the teaching of the mind only, they are attached to a variety of external objects. They go from one form of discrimination to another, such as the duality of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and non-bothness, permanence and impermanence, self-substance, habit energy, causation, etc. After discriminating these notions, they go on clinging to them as objectively real and unchangeable, like those animals who, driven by thirst in the summer time, run wildly after imaginary spring. To think that primary elements really exist is due to wrong discrimination and nothing else. When the truth of the mind only is understood, there are no external objects to be seen. They are all due to the discrimination of what one sees in one's own mind. Fifth, not to understand the mind only leads one to eternal transmigrations. As the philosophers fail to go beyond dualism, they hurt not only themselves, but also the ignorant. Going around continually from one path of existence to another, not understanding what is seen is no more than their own mind, and adhering to the notion that things externals are endowed with self-substance, they are unable to free themselves from wrong discrimination. Sixth, the rising of the Alaya is due to our taking the manifestations of the mind for a world of objective realities. The alaya vijnana is its own subject, cause, and object, support, and it clings to a world of its own mental presentations, a system of mentality that evolves mutually conditioning. It is like the waves of the ocean, stirred by the wind, that is, a world made visible by mind itself where the mental waves come and go. This ocean and wave simile is a favorite one with Mahayana Buddhists. Seventh, thus we see that there is nothing in the world that is not of the mind, hence the mind-only doctrine. And this applies with special emphasis to all logical controversies, which, according to the Lankavatara Sutra, are more subjective fabrications. The body, property, and abode, these are no more than the shadows of mind, citta, the ignorant do not understand it. They make assertions, samaropa, or refutations, apavada, and this elaboration is due to mind only, apart from which nothing is obtainable. Even the spiritual stages of bodhisattvahood are merely the reflections of mind. The Buddha abodes in the Buddhist stages are of mind only in which there are no shadows, that is what is taught by the Buddha's past, present, and future. Eighth, when all forms of individuation are negated, there takes place a revulsion, parivriti, in our minds, and we see that the truth that there is nothing but mind from the very beginning, and thereby we are emancipated from the fetters of wrong discrimination. 585. The Pure Land is in your mind. The term the Pure Land is in your mind means this single mind encompasses the four kinds of lands in their totality. From the 6 common Dharma realms to the 4 Dharma realms of the sages are not beyond a present thought in the mind. The mind can create the heavens as well as the hells. The mind can achieve Buddhahood, but it can also turn into a hungry ghost or an animal, or fall into the hells. It can be a bodhisattva, a pratyekabuddha, or a sravaka. Since everything is made from the mind, nothing goes beyond the mind. If we want to create Buddhas in our minds, we become part of the retinue of the Dharma realm of the Buddhas. The other Dharma realms are the same way. Sincere Buddhists should always see this and pay attention to all daily activities from walking, standing, lying down, or sitting. We must regulate ourselves in accord with propriety of a true Buddhist. Sincere Buddhists should always remember that we create more and more karmas and commit more and more sins because we are not concentrated and determined. We get dragged into situations until we forget what we want to do. We forget our goal is to cultivate to become a Buddha, a bodhisattva, or any of the 4 kinds of the sages. Instead, we only know how to create hells, hungry ghosts, and animals, etc. Thus, Buddhas and demons are only a single thought apart. Buddhas are kind and compassionate, while demons are always competitive with unwholesome thoughts. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha taught, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva sees that the triple world is no more than the creation of the citta, manas, and manovijnana, that it is brought forth by falsely discriminating one's own mind, that there are no signs of an external world where the principle of multiplicity rules, and finally that the triple world is just one's own mind. Someone asked Great Master Yen Shu that if the realm of Pure Land within the mind is ubiquitous throughout the 10 directions, why not try to penetrate it, instead of wanting the Pure Land and abandoning the impure land, praying to gain rebirth to the ultimate bliss world, and sit on the lotus throne? Doing so not seem to be consistent with the theory of no birth. If one has the mind of being tired of impurity but is fond of purity, then that is not the mind of equality and non-discrimination? The Great Master replied, Pure Land within the mind is a state achieved only by those who have seen and penetrated the true nature and have attained the non-form Dharma body. Despite this, according to the Buddha's inconceivable, unimaginable World Sutra, those bodhisattvas who have attained the first ground Mahabodhisattva rejoicing ground to enter the world of everything within the mind, still vow to abandon their bodies to be born quickly to the ultimate bliss world. Thus, it is necessary to understand no Dharma exists outside the mind. If this is the case, then the ultimate bliss world is not outside the realm of the mind. As for the theory of no birth and the mind of equality and non-discrimination, of course, in theory this is true. However, for those who still do not have enough spiritual power, have shallow wisdom, impure minds, are bound by heavy karma and afflictions, moreover, when tempted with the 5 desires and the forces of life, how many actually will be able to attain and penetrate this theory? Therefore, these people, most sentient beings of this Dharma-ending age, need to pray to gain rebirth to the ultimate bliss world, so they can rely on the extraordinary and favorable conditions of that world, in order to be able to enter quickly the realm of Pure Land within the mind, and to practice the Bodhisattva's conducts. Moreover, the Book of Commentary 10 Doubts of Pure Land Buddhism taught, those who have wisdom and have already attained the theory of everything is within the mind, yet are still motivated to pray for rebirth to the Pure Land, because they have penetrated completely the true nature of non-birth is illusory. Only then can it be called the true nature of non-birth. As for the ignorant, those who lack wisdom and are incapable of comprehending such a theory, therefore, they are trapped by the meaning of the word birth. Thus, when they hear of birth, they automatically think and conceptualize the form characteristics of birth actually exist, when in fact nothing exists because everything is an illusion. When they hear non-birth, they then mistakenly think of nothing being born anywhere. Given this misconception, they begin to generate a mixture of gossip, criticism, and mockery, thus create various false views, and then degrade the Dharma. Such people truly deserve much pity. 586. Good and evil. According to Buddhism, good is defined as to accord with the right, and bad is defined as to disobey the right. Due to the confused mixture of good and bad karma that we have created, sometimes we have wholesome thoughts and sometimes unwholesome ones. With wholesome thoughts, we vow to avoid evil and do good. With unwholesome thoughts, we are eager to do evil and avoid goodness. For endless eons we have been committing good and evil karmas, doing a few good deeds one day, committing some bad deeds the next day, and then some neutral deeds the day after that. Sincere Buddhists should be very careful in each and every action. Walking, standing, lying, and sitting. We should have bright and pure thoughts at all times. At the same time, we should try our best to avoid dark and impure thoughts. In the Dharmapada Sutra, the Buddha taught, the evildoer grieves in this world and in the next, he grieves in both. He grieves and suffers when he perceives the evil of his own deeds. Dharmapada 15. The virtuous man rejoices in this world and in the next. He is happy in both worlds. He rejoices and delights when he perceives the purity of his own deeds. Dharmapada 16. The evil man suffers in this world and in the next. He suffers everywhere. He suffers whenever he thinks of the evil deeds he has done. Furthermore, he suffers even more when he has gone to a woeful path. Dharmapada 17. The virtuous man is happy here in this world, and he is happy there in the next. He is happy everywhere. He is happy when he thinks of the good deeds he has done. Furthermore, he is even happier when he has gone to a blissful path. Dharmapada 18. Do not associate with wicked friends, do not associate with men of mean nature. Do associate with good friends, do associate with men of noble nature. 78. Do not disregard small good, saying, it will not matter to me. Even by the falling of drop by drop, a water jar is filled. Likewise, the wise man gathers his merit little by little. Dharmapada 122. A fool does not realize when he commits wrong deeds. By his own deeds the stupid man is tormented, like one is lighting fires wherein he must be burnt one day. Dharmapada 136. Even the royal chariot well decorated becomes old, the body too will reach old age. Only the Dharma of the good ones does not decay. Thus the good people reveal to good people. 151. Whosoever uses good deed to cover evil deed being done, such person outshines this world like the moon free from the clouds. 173. Being absent a long time, a man has returned home safe and sound. Relatives, friends and acquaintances welcome him home. In the same way, good actions will welcome the well-doer, who has gone from this world to the next world, just as relatives welcome a dear one who has come back. 219 and 220. Even from afar the good ones shine, like the mountain of snow. The bad ones even here are not to be seen, like the arrows shot in the night. 304. Better not to do evil deed, afterward evil deed brings up torment. Better to perform good deed, having done good deed there will be no torment. 314. 587. 6 unconditioned dharmas. There are 6 unconditioned dharmas, or 6 inactive or metaphysical concepts. The unconditioned dharma, the ultimate inertia from which all forms come, the nominal source of all phenomenal. Those dharmas which do not arise or cease, and are not transient, such as nirvana, the dharma body, etc. Unconditioned merits and virtues are the causes of liberation from birth and death. First, unconditioned empty space, akasha. Second, unconditioned extinction, pratisambhyanarata, which is attained through selection. Extinction obtained by knowledge. Third, unconditioned extinction, apratisambhyanarata, which is unselected. Extinction not by knowledge but by nature. Fourth, unconditioned unmoving extinction, anindya. Extinction by a motionless state of heavenly meditation. Fifth, unconditioned extinction of feeling, samnavadatanarata. Extinction by the stop page of idea and sensation by inner at. Sixth, unconditioned true suchness, tathata. 588. 24 not interactive dharmas. According to the consciousness-only school, there are 24 indefinites or not interactive dharmas, or unconditioned elements, or non-interactive activity dharmas. Acquisition or attainment, prapti, life faculty or life, jivitindriya, generic similarity or nature of sharing similar species, nikaya sabhaga, dissimilarity or nature of making different species, visabhaga. No thought samadhi or meditative concentration in thoughtless heaven, asamdha samapatti, samadhi of extinction or meditative concentration in extinction, nirodha samapatti, reward of no thought or facts obtained by thoughtless meditation, asamjnika, bodies of nouns or names, namakaya, bodies of sentences or words, padakaya, bodies of phonemes or letters, vyanjanakaya, birth. Impermanence, anityata, becoming or revolution, pravritti, distinction, pratiniyama, interaction or union, yoga, speed, java, sequence or succession, anakrama, time, kala, direction, desha, numeration, samkhya, combination or totality, samagri, and discontinuity or differentiation, anyatatva. 589. 11 form dharmas. 11 form dharmas include the 5 physical organs: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the 6 modes of sense: matter, sound, smell, taste, touch, things. According to the Sanjiti Sutta in the long discourses of the Buddha, there are 5 roots or faculties, indriyani, or the 5 organs of the senses of 5 spiritual faculties: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. The 5 sense organs can be entrances to the hells. At the same time, they can be some of the most important entrances to the great enlightenment, for with them, we create karmas and sins, but also with them, we can practice the right way. According to Bhikkhu Piyananda in the Gems of Buddhism Wisdom, you must always be aware of the sense organs such as eye, ear, nose, tongue and body, and the contact they are having with the outside world. You must be aware of the feelings that are arising as a result of this contact. The 6 objects are the 6 objective fields of the 6 senses of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch and idea or thought. Rupa, form and color, is the field of vision, sound of hearing, scent of smelling, the 5 flavors of tasting, physical feeling of touch, and mental presentation of discernment. Forms included in Dharma ayatana or elements as objects of consciousness, dharmayatanakani rupani, include a substantial form analyzed to utmost, the smallest atom, an unsubstantial form as areal space or color analyzed to utmost, the remotest atom, a perceptive form conceived at ordination, the innermost impression, a momentary elusive form, and a form produced by meditation. The 5 faculties in the 6 modes of sense have a very close relationship. First, eye is now in contact with forms, rupa. Second, ear is now in contact with sound. Third, nose is now in contact with smell. Fourth, tongue is now in contact with taste. Fifth, body is now in contact with touching. 590. 51 mental states that are interactive with the mind. According to the Kosa Sastra, there are 100 divisions of all mental qualities, and they're agents of the consciousness-only school, or 5 groups of 100 modes or things. 51 mental states are divided into 6 parts. Part 1 is the 5 universally interactive mental states, sarvatraga. The first mental state is the attention, manaskara, or paying attention on something. The second mental state is the contact, sparsha, which means after paying attention on something, one has a tendency to want to come in contact with it. The third mental state is the feeling, vedana, which means once contact is established, feeling arises. The fourth mental state is the conceptualization, samjna, which means once feeling arises, conceptualization occurs. The fifth mental state is the deliberation, sitana, which means once there is conceptualization then deliberation sets in. Part 2 is the 5 particular states, vinyata. The sixth mental state is the desire, chanda. Desire means to want for something. The seventh mental state is the resolution, adhimoksha. Resolution means supreme understanding without any doubt at all. The eighth mental state is the recollection, smriti. Recollection means remembering clearly. The ninth mental state is the concentration, samadhi. Concentration means exclusively pay attention to something. The 10th mental state is the judgment, prajna. Judgment means ability to judge, which average person possesses. Part 3 is the 11 wholesome states, kushala. The 11th mental state is the faith, shraddha. Faith means to have a sense of belief or an attitude of faith. The 12th mental state is the vigor, virya. Once one has faith, one should put it into action with vigor. The 13th mental state is the shame, rai. Shame also means repentance. The 14th mental state is the remorse or embarrassment, apatraya. The 15th mental state is the sense of greed, alabha. The 16th mental state is the absence of anger, advesha. The 17th mental state is the absence of ignorance, amoha. The 18th mental state is the lighties, prashradi. Lighties, an initial expedient in the cultivation of Zen. Before samadhi is actually achieved, one experiences lighties. The 19th mental state is the non-laxness, apramata, or to follow the rules. The 20th mental state is the renunciation, upeksha. Renunciation means not to grasp on the past, but to renounce everything within the activity skandha which is not in accord with the rules. The 21st mental state is the non-harming, ahimsa, which means not harming any living beings. Part 4 is the 6 fundamental afflictions, klesha. The 22nd mental state is the greed, raga. Greed for wealth, sex, fame, food, sleep, or greed for forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and objects of touch. The 23rd mental state is the anger, prataya. Not obtaining what one is greedy for leads to anger. The 24th mental state is the ignorance, moha. Once anger arises, one has nothing but ignorance. The 25th mental state is the arrogance, mana. Arrogance means pride and conceit which causes one to look down on others. The 26th mental state is the doubt, visikitsa. Cannot believe or make up one's mind on something. The 27th mental state is the improper views, drishti. Part 5 is the 20 derivative afflictions, upaklesha. Derivative afflictions include 10 minor grade afflictions, 2 intermediate grade afflictions, and 8 major grade afflictions. 10 minor grade afflictions include wrath, hatred, covering, rage, deceit, conceit, harming, flattery, jealousy, and stinginess. The 28th mental state is the wrath, krodha. Wrath which comes suddenly and is a combination of anger and hatred. The 29th mental state is the hatred, apanaha. Hatred happens when one represses the emotional feelings deep inside. The 30th mental state is the rage, pradasa. rage, of which the emotional reaction is much more severe than hatred. The 31st mental state is the hiding, raksha. Hiding means covering or concealing something inside. The 32nd mental state is the deceit, maya. Deceit means false kindness or phone intention. The 33rd mental state is the flattery, shathya. The 34th mental state is the conceit, mata. Conceit means to think high of self and low of others. The 35th mental state is the harming, vihimsa. Harming means to want to harm other people. The 36th mental state is the jealousy, irshya. Jealousy means to become envious of the who surpass us in one way or other. The 37th mental state is the stinginess, matsarya. One is tight about one's wealth, not wishing to share it with others. Two intermediate grade afflictions include lack of shame and lack of remorse. The 38th mental state is the lack of shame, arikya. Lack of shame means to do wrong, but always feel self-righteous. The 39th mental state is the lack of remorse, anapatrapya. Lack of remorse means never examine to see if one is up to the standards of others. 8 major grade afflictions include lack of faith, laziness, laxiness, torpor, restlessness, distraction, improper knowledge and scatteredness. The 40th mental state is the lack of faith, ashradya. Lack of faith means not trust or believe in anyone, not to believe in the truth. The 41st mental state is the laziness, kausidya. Laziness means not to try to eliminate unwholesome deeds and to perform good deeds. The 42nd mental state is the laxiness, pramada. Laxiness means not to let the body and mind to follow the rules, but does whatever one pleases. The 43rd mental state is the torpor, sthayana. Torpor means to feel obscure in mind or to fall asleep in the process. The 44th mental state is the restlessness, adatya. One is agitated and cannot keep still. The 45th mental state is the distraction, mishita. Distraction means to lose proper mindfulness. The 46th mental state is the improper knowledge, asamprahanya. One become obsesses with defilement. The 47th mental state is the scatteredness, vikshepa. Part 6 is the 4 unfixed mental states, anayata. The 48th mental state is the falling asleep to obscure the mind, mida. The 49th mental state is the regret, kodritya, or repent for wrongdoings in the past. The 50th mental state is the investigation, vitarka means to cause the mind unstable. The 51st mental state is the correct examination, vikara means to pacify the mind. 591. 8 perceptions. According to the Mahayana awakening of faith, there are 8 perceptions. Seeing, Caksar Vijnana, or sight consciousness, hearing, Sratra Vijnana, or hearing consciousness, smelling, Grana Vijnana, or scent consciousness, tasting, Jiva Vijnana, or taste consciousness, touching, Kaya Vijnana, or touch consciousness, thinking consciousness, Mano Vijnana, and the discriminating and constructive sense, Klista Mano Vijnana. Among them, mind or mano-consciousness, the mental sense or intellect, mentality or apprehension, or the thinking consciousness that coordinates the perceptions of this sense, organs. The discriminating and constructive sense. It is more than the intellectually perceptive. It is the cause of all egoism. It creates the illusion of a subject I standing apart from the object world, an individualizing of men and things, all illusion arising from assuming the seeming as the real. The self-conscious defiled mind, which thinks, wills, and is the principal factor in the generation of subjectivity. It is a conveyor of the seed essence of sensory experiences to the 8th level of subconsciousness. The storehouse consciousness or basis from which come all seeds of consciousness or from which it responds to causes and conditions. Specific seeds are reconveyed by manas to the 6 senses, precipitating new actions, which in turn produce other seeds. This process is simultaneous and endless. According to the Lankavatara Sutra, this system of the 5 sense vijnanas is in union with manovijnana, and this mutuality makes the system distinguish between what is good and what is not good. Manovijnana in union with the 5 sense vijnanas grasps forms and appearances in their multitudinous effect, and there is not a moment's cessation of activity. This is called the momentary character of the Vijnanas. This system of Vijnanas is stirred uninterruptedly and all the time like the waves of the great ocean, also known as Alaya Vijnana. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha told Mahamati, "O Mahamati, the Tathagata Garbha contains in itself causes alike good and not good, and from which are generated all paths of existence. It is like an actor playing different characters without harboring any thought of me and mine. Alaya means all-conserving. It is in company with the 7 Vijnanas which are generated in the dwelling house of ignorance. The function of Alaya Vijnana is to look into itself where all the memory, vasana, of the beginningless past is preserved in a way beyond consciousness, asindhya, and ready for further evolution, parinama, but it has no active energy in itself, it never acts, it simply perceives. It is in this exactly like a mirror, it is again like the ocean, perfectly smooth with no waves disturbing its tranquility, and it is pure and undefiled, which means that it is free from the dualism of subject and object. For it is the pure act of perceiving, with no differentiation yet of the knowing one and the known. Mana is the waves that are seen ruffling the surface of the ocean of Alaya Vijnana, when the principle of individuation known as Vishaya blows over it like the wind. The waves thus started are this world of particulars where the intellect discriminates, the affection clings, and passions and desires struggle for existence and supremacy. This particularizing agency sits within the system of Vijnanas and is known as manas. In fact, it is when manas begins to operate that a system of the Vijnanas manifests itself. They are thus called object discriminating Vijnana, Vastu Prativikalpa Vijnana. The function of manas is essentially to reflect upon the alaya and to create, and to discriminate subject and object from the pure oceans of the alaya. The memory accumulated in the latter is now divided into dualities of all forms and all kinds. This is compared to the manifoldness of waves that stir up the ocean of alaya. Manas is an evil spirit in one sense, and a good one in another, for discrimination in itself is not evil, is not necessarily always false judgment, abhuta parakalpa, or wrong reasoning, prapanka dishdulya. But it grows to be the source of great calamity when it creates desires based upon its wrong judgments, such as when it believes in the reality of an ego substance, and becomes attached to it as the ultimate truth. For manas is not only a discriminating intelligence, but a willing agency, and consequently an actor. The function of Manovijnana is by hypothesis to reflect on manas, as the eye Vijnana reflects on the world of forms and the ear Vijnana on that of sounds, but in fact as soon as manas evolves the dualism of subject and object out of the absolute unity of the alaya, Manovijnana and indeed all the other Vijnanas begin to operate. Thus, in the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha said, Buddhist nirvana consists in turning away from the wrongfully discriminating Manovijnana. For with Manovijnana as cause, hetu, and support, alambana, there takes place the evolution of the 7 Vijnanas. Further, when Manovijnana discerns and clings to an external world of particulars, all kinds of habit energy, vasana, are generated therefrom, and by them the alaya is nurtured. Together with the thought of me and mine taking hold of it and clinging to it, and reflecting upon it, manas thereby takes shape and is evolved. In substance, sarira, however, manas and Manovijnana are not different one from the other, they depend upon the alaya as cause and support. And when an external world is tenaciously held as real, which is no other than the presentation of one's own mind, the mentation system, siddhakalapa, mutually related, is evolved in its totality. Like the ocean waves, the Vijnana is set in motion by the wind of an external world which is the manifestation of one's own mind, rise and cease. Therefore, the 7 Vijnanas cease with the cessation of Manovijnana. 592. Let's the sorrowless flowers always bloom in our minds. The opportunity our precious human lives does not last forever. Sooner or later, death comes to everyone. The very true nature of our lives is impermanent, and death inevitable. When we first took birth, given the countless number of bodies into which we have been born, death is an irrevocable result of living. Therefore, we should not ignore it, on the contrary, it is good to think about it seriously. According to the Buddhist point of view, death is not an end, but a means leading to another rebirth. The conscious mind only migrates from life to life. The starting point of such a process is impossible to retrace. However, our existence in samsara is not naturally infinite. Also, according to the Buddhist point of view, it is possible to put an end to it. A seed has no beginning, but it is not naturally infinite. If we burn the seed, we can destroy its potential to grow. That is the end of it. The only way to do is to let the sorrowless flowers always bloom in our minds. Why? Because once the sorrowless flowers bloom in our minds, we no longer continue to grow any seed for this rebirth cycle. Due to our deluded mind, even in this present life, we are constantly operating with negative actions. We do not have much freedom from afflictive emotions. We are enslaved by them. We are prisoners of our own devices. For example, when anger rises in us, we become completely under the control of this afflictive emotion. It makes us think and act in ways we do not want to. If we step back and look in a mirror when we become angry, we will see what anger has done to us. We will see anger's power to destroy us and others around us. We might wonder if it is indeed possible to expiate a non-virtuous deed, such as one of these 5 heinous crimes. According to Prasangika Madhyamaka, any kind of negative deed can be expiated. This is a property of negativities. If we do not leave them unattended until they are ripen, we can purify them. Non-virtuous deeds are negative by nature, but have the quality of being purified. There are people who believe that they can get away with whatever negative action they commit. They are those who do not believe in the law of cause and effect. We have no comment on these people. Sincere Buddhists should always remember that according to the law of cause and effect, the consequences of any kind of act one commits, virtuous or non-virtuous, must be faced by that same person. In other words, each person is responsible for his own actions. And again, the only way to do this is to let the sorrowless flowers always bloom in our minds. Why? Because once the sorrowless flowers bloom in our minds, we are able to purify all negative and non-virtuous deeds in the past. At the same time, we can avoid similar negative and non-virtuous deeds at the present and in the future. However, the sorrowless flowers only bloom when we are content with few desires, or when we have few desires. Here desires include not only the desire for money and material things, but also the wish for status and fame. It also indicates seeking the love and service of others. In Buddhism, a person who has attained the mental stage of deep faith has very few desires and is indifferent to them. We must note carefully that though such a person is indifferent to worldly desires, he is very eager for the truth, that is, he has a great desire for the truth. To be indifferent to the truth is to be slothful in life. To be content with few desires also means to be satisfied with little material gain, that is, not to feel discontented with one's lot, and to be free from worldly cares. This does not mean to be unconcerned with self-improvement, but to do one's best in one's work without discontent. Such a person will never be ignored by those around him. But even if people around him ignored him, he would feel quite happy because he lives like a king from a spiritual point of view. We must have few desires in 2 areas. The desires for food and sex. Food and sex support ignorance in perpetrating all sort of evil. Thus, Confucius taught, food and sex are part of human nature. That is to say, we are born with the craving for food and sex. Why is that we have not been able to demolish our ignorance, eliminate our afflictions, and reveal our wisdom? Because we always crave for food and sex. Sincere Buddhists should always remember that food gives rise to sexual desire, and sexual desire gives rise to ignorance. Once the desire for food arises, the desire for sex arises as well. Men are attracted to beautiful women, and women are charmed by handsome men. People become infatuated and obsessed and cannot see through their desires. The nourishment from the food we eat is transformed into reproductive essence, and once that essence is full, sexual desire arises. Sincere Buddhists should always remember that the less tasty the food is, the better. Food should not be regarded as too important. Sincere Buddhists should practice moderation and eat only enough to sustain ourselves. We should neither eat very rich food nor eat spoiled food, for either one could ruin our health. Finally, the sorrowless flowers only bloom when we understand things as they really are, that is, seeing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-substantial or non-self nature of the five aggregates of clinging in ourselves. It is not easy to understand ourselves because of our wrong concepts, baseless illusions, perversions and delusions. It is so difficult to see the real person. The Buddha taught that to be a real knower, we must first see and understand the impermanence of the five aggregates. He compares material form or body to a lump of foam, feeling to a bubble, perception to a mirage, mental formations or volitional activities to water lily plant which is without heartwood, and consciousness to an illusion. The Buddha says, whatever material form there be, whether past, future or present, internal, external, gross or subtle, low or lofty, far or near, that material form is empty, unsubstantial and without essence. In the same manner, the remaining aggregates, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness are also empty, unsubstantial and without essence. Thus, the five aggregates are impermanent. Whatever is impermanent, that is suffering, unsatisfactory and without self. Whenever you understand this, you understand yourselves. To Buddhists, the blooming of the sorrowless flowers bloom also means the illumination of wisdom. In Buddhism, wisdom is of the highest importance, for purification comes through wisdom, through understanding, and wisdom in Buddhism is the key to enlightenment and final liberation. But the Buddha never praised mere intellect. It is the knowledge of loving kindness, of compassion, of joy, of letting go, of altruism, of understanding of the law of cause and effect, of wishing for freedom, of seeking enlightenment and emancipation for others. It is saving knowledge, and not mere speculation, logic or specious reasoning. However, devout Buddhists never fall in love with wisdom, nor induce the search after wisdom, nor adore wisdom. Although wisdom really has its significance and bearing on mankind, devout Buddhists should use it as an encouragement of a practical application of the teaching that leads the follower to dispassion, enlightenment and final deliverance. Hoping that the sorrowless flowers are blooming everywhere, so that one day all beings will achieve Buddhahood together. As we wrap up this video, we sincerely appreciate your support. Please stay tuned for our upcoming content. Your continued viewership means the world to us. Thank you. As you already know, Buddha emphasized the importance of generosity supporting the spread of the Dharma for spiritual growth. We can cultivate this virtue in our digital age. Now I need your help spreading the Buddha teaching further by subscribing, liking, and sharing our channel. You're supporting the dissemination of valuable teachings, much like this Sangha was supported in the past. Your engagement accumulates positive karma for you and helps make the Dharma accessible to a wider audience, a meritorious act indeed. Let's do this with pure intentions, free from attachment and selfishness, fostering a sense of community and supporting our own spiritual journey. These principles, rooted in Buddhist ethics, continue to guide us. You will receive great blessings for supporting the propagation of Buddha's teachings in a very simple way. By subscribing, liking, and sharing to help spreading the Buddha teaching to all human beings. Wishing you and your family always have a peaceful and happy life.